So the last IEMs I reviewed ended up being kind of a disappointment to me because of what I expected of them, which were the Blonde BL01, and you can check that review up there if you haven't seen it yet. Now, that just goes to show how important expectations, like meeting expectations or at least controlling and curbing them, is for the actual success of a product. Now, in contrast, these guys, the KBear Lark that we are discussing today, which have also been sent with the Blonde BL01 for review by KeepHifi, funnily enough. Anyway, these guys have actually been a pleasant surprise because they met, basically, the overall expectations that they set out for themselves. What I mean is, from the moment I actually got the box and started reading everything that's on here, well, not necessarily everything, because there's a bunch of stuff that's in Chinese and I don't read Chinese yet. The Lark seemed to me like it set out to be a $30 IEM that looked like and would deliver a more premium feeling experience. And yes, totally judging a book by its cover, the way it presents itself also gives you the impression that it is going to be a more balanced, more well-versed, more well-tuned, carefully tuned sound signature as well. So when you grab the IEMs in hand and you actually start looking at them, what do you get in terms of build? Well, it looks pretty nice, at least in my opinion, and it's rather light, at least compared to what I expected it would be, because it's made of plastic and metal, but it's actually pretty light for the materials and the size, because this is not exactly a small IEM, but having a longer, deeper stem means that this is probably not going to be any difficult to actually get to fit in your ears in a comfortable manner. Plus, the tips that are included in the box actually do create a pretty good seal. I tried them with the silicone tips it comes with and with foam tips and other stuff that I have in my little tip box, and it just works nicely with everything. So I have actually been using them with the stock tips and haven't really felt the necessity to go for anything different, really. It also comes with a carrying case and a nice overall silver wire. Now, this is not the most flowy or most straight or most perfect wire you can get out there, but I have zero issues with this being the wire that comes with a $30 IEM. This puts to shame so many other wires that's kind of not even funny. Definitely not the best wires you could grab for your IEMs, but they're not bad at all and far from being among the worst. Looking at you guys again, Blonde, I mean, get your act together. Now, in terms of drivers inside, I guess everyone and their dog are using, two drivers, one being dynamic and the other balanced armatures, and the Lark is no exception. But at least they kind of seem to know what they're doing, and they're pretty easy to drive. So that carrying case is going to come in handy if you don't want a cable mess in your pockets and you actually can go somewhere else and you're not on quarantine. But I digress. You can plug these things into basically anything and they're going to start singing. But up to this point, everything that the Lark was actually able to achieve was to look and at least present itself in a way that feels like a more premium experience, and all of that, like, it's great, but it's largely unimportant unless the Lark also doesn't sound like crap, right? It doesn't. Like, flat out, does not sound like crap. Despite the design, they are not monitoring IEMs. They don't have an overly analytical situation going on, but they are a little bit critical, a little clinical towards what you're listening to. I guess the word that would best describe them, actually words, plural, is they're balanced and enjoyable. If you take the sound profile of the Larks, it's got a little bit more emphasis on the low end, not too much, it's definitely not a bassy IEM, but it's got a bit of punch to it, so a little bit deep and controlled, and there's a lot of detail and quite a bit of information there, so it's not a sloppy low end at that. In the mid-range, you have a well-balanced and well-detailed portrayal, especially for the money, and it's not like they're doing something fantastic in the mid-range, like wow, and this is actually true throughout. It's more like they're not trying too hard. They successfully did that to the low end. They kept the mids well balanced and detailed just as it should be, and since the overall sound signature they're pushing towards is something more natural sounding and well balanced, the highs are a little bit more emphasized with a lot of detail retrieval in there, keeping them from being too harsh or necessarily being too sibilant. Granted, because of that extra emphasis and the extra levels of detail that you have there, the S region, especially for people who are a bit more sensitive to high-end notes, can be a little bothersome. It also makes the Lark a little bit more critical of what you are listening to, because since it's pretty neutral and well balanced, it's not going to color what you're hearing, and in case you have a bad recording of something, this is going to show you that recording as is. It's not going to save a bad recording from itself. So sometimes it might be actually beneficial to try and find a better recording of something if it doesn't really sound that good with the Lark, because this is an IEM where that actually does play a factor. And I don't mean that this is the type of IEM that only pristine recordings are going to sound good. It's not to that extreme of a level, but I mean, bad recordings are bad recordings, and with the Lark, it shows. But on the plus side, not necessarily that that was a negative, but anyway, on the plus side, you have a good dynamic range for the money, as well as a decent portrayed soundstage. Both better than I expected. Not too close, so not claustrophobic, not too wide, so it doesn't feel like you're artificially enhancing the overall space, but what it ends up delivering is a good separation of instrumentation within that area that it creates, which is a definite plus. And in terms of imaging, there's nothing to note, really. It doesn't do anything incredibly spectacular, but it also definitely doesn't miss the mark, so I'd say that imaging is basically on point. Now, I usually don't go into music genres because that's too much of a personal thing, but again, you guys understanding or knowing what I like to listen to doesn't detract from the information that I'm, giving you guys on the review anyway. Just cutting to the chase, I've been having the most fun with the Lark, listening to rock, jazz, and more movie soundtracky instrumental stuff. When it comes to more electronic music, these don't do a bad job, but they haven't been my go-to IEMs. I would rather use them for more rocky stuff. All in all, this whole shebang feeds back into that expectation thing. And really looking at all of that and everything that the Lark actually delivers, all I can really say is that, yeah, it stuck the landing. I especially enjoy the fact that it gets all of that done when, particularly below the $50 price range, most other companies seem to find themselves in that spot where they're trying to find something that's unique to them, and they usually end up going too far, which in turn creates a mess. You have too much bass or a disjointed, way too harsh high end, or the mids are like completely out of whack, and any of those scenarios ends up basically killing the balance of the sound and, more importantly, the enjoyability of the IEMs. Which is basically differentiation for the sake of being different, and that usually doesn't get you anywhere nice. So what I have to say to KBear is, guys, mission accomplished. The Lark is a pretty good looking and pretty good sounding IEM. And also, really big kudos on showing proper restraint. Because you guys could have, but you didn't go overboard. And that's a really good thing, because you ended up with a fine IEM on your hands. And that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, so like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave any comments or suggestions down below as usual if you're feeling like it, and share the video as well if you enjoyed it. It really helps me out a lot and I appreciate it. Check out these other videos that might be of interest to you. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Gus, and I'll catch you guys later.